Okay, good Sunday evening. I wanted to uh, give you some information about the journey that our country is going to take in the 1800s. You and I have certainly looked at the 1600s legs of the American table and 1700s legs of the American table. And more than likely, I think if I asked anyone what the most momentous event was of the 1800s, I would surely hope that they would tell me the American Civil War. And, well, they would be right. While there are other legs also that are very crucial to our growing as a major industrial power, and eventually as a major military power, the American Civil War that began in 1861 was really a defining crossroads, if you want to say. A crossroad is basically something where you can either go one way or you can go another. And in December of 1860, about 4 months before the Civil War actually began, the state of South Carolina, which had always been a rebel state in that they were always threatening to walk out of a meeting, where they threatened to walk out of the Constitutional Convention. They did threaten to walk out of the Declaration of Independence Convention. They were, for the most part, many would claim to be, bullies, and they were. They seceded from the Union on December 20th, 1860. Basically, what secession meant was they left. They left the Union. And by the time the Civil War began in April, 4 months later, 5 months later, 11 states had left the Union. They formed the Confederate States of America. They nominated their own president. They had a vice president. They had their own Congress. They wrote their own constitution. So basically what you had on the continent of North America by 1861 in April were two countries, okay? The United States of America and the Confederate States of America. How did we get to that point? And we need to look at some of the events that will lead us there. When we started talking the other day about the 1800s, and we looked at the population in 1800 of about, 5.3 million people, we said almost 1 million of them already were slaves. And we started to look to the South as really, well, basically what the economy of the South, even though it was just focused on cotton, and we called it that's what you call a one crop economy. They focused on cotton and not much of anything else. Not only the South prospered, but also so did the North. And Northerners prospered particularly by still importing slaves up until 1807, when Congress made it illegal to import slaves. When Congress made it illegal, and there were penalties if you were caught importing slaves, what the American ingenuity, I guess you could say, what we did was, well, we just started smuggling. We started smuggling slaves in. Slaves would come from Africa, they would go to the Caribbean, and then from the Caribbean, American smugglers would figure out ways how to get these slaves primarily to the northern states, They felt that they would not be under much scrutiny if their ships were going to, let's say, the port of Boston or the port of New York as opposed to the port of Charleston. So between 1810, I would say, and 1861, the year when the Civil War breaks out, about 300,000 more Africans were smuggled into this country, so that by the time the war began, there were approximately 4 million slaves in the United States. Okay. The numbers grew basically on natural reproduction. Even though slavery was a horrendous system, what we also found at that time was if you compared slavery in other parts of the Caribbean and Brazil, slaves that went to North America tended to live longer. Although you could barely find any slave that would live to be 60 years old, much less probably 45 years old. So we are going to have to, we as a nation are going to have to come to grips eventually with this. Really, there are two sides here of America. One is a free white side, and the other is a enslaved black side. Okay, so two very different societies growing up there. I'll stop here and I'll do another.